So the big question is this: how can dyslexics like us create a place, a community, a tribe where people at any stage of life can come and solve any challenge, amplify their strengths, and ultimately help them become who they were meant to be, or in other words, conquer their dyslexia? That is the question, and this show is the answer. My name's Theo Goff, and welcome to the Conquering Dyslexia Podcast. Hey guys, I hope we're doing alright, and I hope we're doing good today. And today I want to have a little conversation with you lot about something I've been thinking about the last 3 days. I've been experiencing it 3 days at quite a high level, and it's like with my dyslexia, with whatever label, I find it incredibly hard to remember people's names. Really hard to remember people's names. And it's like, I always find it funny when I say, oh yeah, I find it hard remembering names. Everyone else says, oh, I find it hard too. Yeah, I'm really bad at remembering names. And I laugh at them thinking, you have no idea. And they always says, no, I'm really bad at remembering names. I go, no, it's in a different league. It's funny. But one of the issues one of the common problems that I face day to day is not being able to remember people's names, because I've recently basically, because of the quarantine or whatever, summer holidays, I'm now back working in the school, and now this new school I'm working in with these kids. So I'm working in year one, and they're all like kids I known from before because I used to work there a bit, but I'm in there now with all the kids, and their names is so it's so frustrating to me to like try and remember your names, because basically there's a few kids in there who need a bit of extra attention and a bit of extra, you mean because they got some needs or whatever. And I know there's this one kid that's kind of like the main kid that has a lot of needs, and I know his name. I said his name 1,000 times, but literally as I'm speaking to you now, I can't remember his name. I can remember like a few other names, but I cannot remember his name. I know his name, but I can't retrieve it at this very point in time. And it's so frustrating, like when things are happening, because I just don't know it, and doing tasks like handing out their jumpers, or because it's year one kids, they're quite young, handing out jumpers, lunch boxes, and all these sort of little tasks. I finding it now extremely difficult, because I can't do that as well, and I sort of have like little workarounds. Like, for example, I see their pictures on the trays to handing in, doing all this stuff, and I find little workarounds to make me feel good, make me feel like, oh, I can do this, can solve this problem, I can do this thing. And the one thing that I feel that makes me feel quite bad, and the reason why I'm saying this story is hopefully you can get something from it. If you've got dyslexia, or you know someone that has like a kid, just putting your mind in what's it like to have problems every single day that people don't really see, or that people can misunderstand. And yes, one thing having the problem of not being able to remember people's names, but it's another thing worrying about what other people think of you because you can't remember those names. That's so big. It's like, I remember one time ages ago, I was basically at this volunteering trip, going to a place called a country called Nepal to volunteer for a couple of months, and basically a couple of us from England and a couple of us from like Nepal to work together, and it was an amazing experience. But I remember my first couple of days of being in Nepal, I had all this English group of people, and we were like learning about the culture, and we were like doing a lot of learning. And between our learning, we would do these exercises where we would get out and do these team building, whatever exercises. And a lot of those things where we sort of like there's this game that we had to like name someone, or like point at someone and name someone else. It's a funny little silly thing. And I remember I seen these people like 3-4 days, like full on, like 24/7 seeing these people. So they've all bonded, they've created friends, and everyone knows everyone's names. I remember like being like 4 or 5 days not knowing anyone's names. I'd point to that person, I would know exactly I know their name, but I couldn't retrieve that name in that moment. And I would get so annoyed and so frustrated, and like, because at the time I just play it off or whatever and just go, oh, you know what I mean, or what's her name, and I'd try that thing. But I remember this one moment, this one moment, because I in the group, I couldn't I couldn't remember anyone's name, and we sat down back in the meeting, and this girl said quite innocently, you mean like in a joking sort of way, but I did take it jokingly. It's like, you don't remember my name, so I'm not talking to you anymore. And I remember having like sunglasses on at that time. I physically cried with my sunglasses, and I remember it like feeling so hurt and so, you mean, I just upset because I'm not this. You mean, I like, for example, she thinks I don't remember her name and I don't care, but that's completely opposite. I really want to know your name, and yes, I've heard it thousands of times. I just can't recall it, and that made me feel so bad, because not because of I can't remember your name, but because of what I think you think of me because of that. Does that make sense? It's what I think of you thinking of me because I can't do this thing. That's one of the worst feelings people have, and I have with trying to remember people's names. And I felt this really strongly, like this really strong emotion. I told about it like a couple months later. It's like, oh, I was just joking. I was like, oh God, I let this thing weigh upon me, like saying, oh, she doesn't care. And I felt angry and all these emotions because I took just like 2-3 words, what she said, and I attached so much meaning to it. Like, that means she doesn't think I care. That means, all these meanings, all these labels. And that's how I feel like a common, when we have dyslexia, when we have things that are different than everyone else, things we find a lot harder, and then because we can't do other tasks that other people can do, and tasks that aren't hard tasks, that are like routine tasks, and when you struggle with it a lot and other people don't, it's not the fact that you struggle with it that's hard, it's the fact that you're worrying what other people think of you because you're struggling with that. And I feel that's so valuable, and I remember I want to offer some value to you. So the reason why I'm saying this is you can do this with reading, you can do this with writing, you can do this with sense of direction, you can do this with speaking, you can do this with so many different things. And it's not the actual problem, it's what you think other people think of you because of that problem. And it's so emotional. So I wrote down kind of a couple steps of how you can deal with it and how I help dealing with it. I think it's really, really good, because the first thing you have to realise when you're making these common mistakes and you make them over and over again is that the first thing you have to realise is just acceptance. Acceptance, one, of the problem, and acceptance of how it's happened. And for example, just accept the situation and don't overemphasize certain things. For example, you just accept it. Because that person made this comment, because that person said, oh, you can't remember names, or oh, you can't read, or that person didn't pick you to this task. Because, for example, they didn't pick me to do certain tasks, and I didn't want to do certain tasks because I know I'll be rubbish at it. But me thinking that they think I'm less able, or I can't do my job, or I can't do these things, me thinking that is all up in my head. It's my story I tell myself. And so you have to accept what is, and that's step number one. Is accept what is. Okay, this is what's happening. And number two is notice and stop thinking about sort of like the spiral of thought that you happen in your mind. For example, oh, this person thinks I can't do my job, or this person thinks like this. Oh, you mean I'm not bad at this job? Number two is notice and notice. I'd say notice, appreciate, and then just leave it alone. The spiral of thought, thinking like negative thoughts about, oh, she thinks this person thinks this, that person thinks that, and that's step number two. Okay, and then step number three is finding a higher purpose. And finding a higher purpose, what I mean by this, that's probably not the best word for saying finding higher purpose. But when I say I mean finding a higher purpose, what I mean by make this in some sort of way an advantage. And it takes thinking, it takes, so okay, for example, you have this problem here and you want to work on it in some way. You can look at it in a positive light. And I do this a lot of ways and a lot of different things, but you just have to ask this question, okay, how can this be a positive in my life? That's all you got to ask. How can this be a positive in my life? For example, back in the school, I got up, I was in a class, young class, I think year 1, year 2, whatever, and they finished the activity and I was the only person in the classroom. Like, okay, let's get a book to read. And the kid got a quite hard book to read, and I had to read it in front of the class, and I couldn't read in front of the class. And so instead of really falling back instead of hating everything. I use that as an advantage to educate other kids about what dyslexia is, about people are different, about no one has to be perfect, and therefore it helps them. It's like creating certain situations that seem negative but turn into a positive. For example, you have this pain by not being able to remember people's names. Yes, I have this pain for it. The example is, for example, I could show the kids, look, I have dyslexia and it's fine and it's this and you may have the same and blah, 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 blah. And also, you'll be able to deal with, say, like, for example, these negative emotions, and then you'll be stronger later on. Because this is a negative situation that you have to overcome if you choose to. If you want to make it negative, you can stay negative. But if you choose to overcome this negative situation and make it into a positive, guess what's that going to do? That's going to strengthen you emotionally. That's going to make you better for the next time a problem happens because you know what to do. And guess what? Problems are a sign of life. Problems happen all the time. Especially if you're dyslexic, they happen all the time. But if you're a human being, problems happen all the time. And it's how we deal with them that what counts, that what matters, okay? It's how we deal with these problems. So you think of it that way. Also think of it, okay, and you've found kind of like a way of dealing with it. For example, you accept it. Step one, you accept it. Step two, you sort of like stop your spiral of thought coming out. And step three, you look for a higher purpose. And you think, okay, what higher purpose is? I can tell people my framework for doing this. I can tell people about this is what I learn. I can help other people going through the same problems. All this stuff, or you can relate it to other people's problems and help them. You can turn it into a positive so many different ways. But it's just about finding a higher purpose and knowing this suffering isn't for nothing. When I say suffering, it's like, I make it sound like the worst thing in the world. It's just a minor inconvenience in the grand scheme of things. And we think it's so bad because other people don't experience it. But yet, it's just a little problem. And for our life, we go through so many horrific, terrible problems that come up. And sometimes because everyone else is going through the same problem, for example, coronavirus. If coronavirus was only real for me, and I was the one that had to self-isolate and do all this stuff, and no one else was, I would feel it's so much more worse than what it is. But because everyone else is in the same boat, it won't feel as hard, because you're not the only one going through it. And because, like, for example, this is, like raising kids, having a divorce, raising kids by yourself, and having a divorce. These things are hard things to deal with. But because a lot of people have raised a kid on their own, and a lot of people had a divorce, there's some sort of way of going forward. You see what I mean? There's some sort of steps going forward. There's people you can talk to. There's things you can do. You're not alone in the problem, and because you're not alone, there's more hope. But because with dyslexic problems, you can sometimes feel you're completely alone. That's really hard to have hope when you're alone, but you have to have hope. But just because you think and it feels like you're going through it, no, you're not. Because you think, or it feels like you are, makes the problem a lot worse. That's all it is, and it's thinking like that. So guys, I really hope you got some value from this and really realised the steps. For example, this like little framework that you can use. But it's just about, like, it's just about realising, because everyone has problems, but it's what we do with the problems that count, and that's how kind of taking responsibility of our dyslexia is really important and really about. Alright guys, take care, farewell, and yeah, if you want to share this stuff, like, I really appreciate it if you get to more people, so if you really feel it would offer a lot of value to you. Okay guys, take care and bye.